couple weeks later, there we go. One full obd1 swapped 8-liter V10 Magnum. That was a long process. So as I talked about, the differences between the obd1 and obd2. So this is the obd1 engine out of my 1994 parts truck, along with, hard to see, but down in there and down along there, the engine harness that is obd1 specific because it runs the different cam sensor, and it also has provisions for the EGR port, which is underneath the intake manifold. Also runs, I found out later on down the road, a different purge valve. So those are both swapped over. Then the complete engine bay wiring harness, everything, power distribution center, all the front end lights, ECM, or Dodge PCM, powertrain control module. I did find out something very interesting during this swap. So that computer, at the time, 1994-95, apparently there was nobody that made a ECM or PCM that was capable of running 10 cylinders. And so what Dodge did, they kind of bastardized things. The ECM or PCM actually only controls 6 cylinders. And I found out the hard way that that little guy, the ignition control module, is what carries and controls the other 4. So very interesting. You can unplug that thing and the engine will sit there and run on 6 cylinders. It won't rev up, doesn't want to do anything, obviously makes no power. When you kill 4 cylinders in a 10, that's a big loss of horsepower. So finally figured that part out. I didn't know that part was there because it's not on the 96 obd2 trucks. It's only on 94, 95. It's also a very expensive little part. I'm very lucky I still had it bolted onto my parts truck sitting outside. So once I had that fixed, then I was running on 10 cylinders. I am going to run it for a little while just with the stock air box and air filter. I'm not going to run it on woodgas just yet because I've got Marvel Mystery Motor Oil in this thing, and I'm going to do a couple oil changes, get this engine as clean as I can, because once I start running it on woodgas again, I want to monitor the oil. I want to see, color change. I want to start cutting filters open, checking everything out. Not worried about the health of the engine at all. This engine runs phenomenal. And very interestingly, this thing wraps up way faster than the old engine did. I'm inclined to believe that whatever programming Dodge put in the PCM from the factory in the 94-95 obd1 trucks has a way more aggressive timing curve. Because like I said, the truck that this engine came out of would run circles around this 96 from when I got it. It's the same engine, the only difference is the PCM and the programming. So obviously I don't have any of the woodgas stuff hooked up yet. Not totally worried about it. I do still have to hook up all the gauges because when I originally installed the woodgas system, you can see the bulkhead connection right there. I had poked a hole through the boot and ran my wires through it, but because I had to change out this harness, I had to cut those wires off. So half of them are bundled up underneath the dash, the other half are bundled up underneath the gas lines underneath for the time being. But like I said, I want to run this engine for a while, let that Marvel do some work in there, get this engine as clean as I can, do a couple oil changes, couple engine flushes, make sure everything's nice and clean. I got 5 gallons of oil right there, 5 more gallons outside, 10W30 conventional that I'll be going through. I got a pile of oil filters on my toolbox over there. Let's see. The fun part was the wiring. There was, oh man, I've spent several hours right here. So this is the underhood harness, not the engine harness, the underhood harness out of this 96. This is the under dash harness out of my 94 parts truck. I would have just swapped this harness in, but this thing has been incredibly hacked by the previous owners of that truck, and it had its own set of issues. But I went through several things I had to find out from one harness to another, and the biggest problem I ran into is this harness was factory designed with fog lights, with the tow package, and with 4-wheel ABS. This harness does not have towing, does not have the fog lamp wiring, and does not have, oh, it only has a rear wheel ABS. So I had to make the 96 obd2 interior truck harness talk to the 94 underhood harness, which, after going through every wiring schematic I could possibly find, what a pain in the ass that was. The main bulkhead connector right here, they are pinned out almost identically. Initially, I thought they were completely identical because I had the engine and underhood harness already plugged into the obd2 harness that's in this truck, and the engine fired up and ran, and it runs perfectly. The check engine functions just like it should on early obd1 trucks. It'll flash the code on the gauge cluster, even though I still have the obd2 port underneath the dash, but it no longer has anything because those wires came out of the bulkhead connector here and are not in this harness. So the plug is still on the dash, it just doesn't do anything. But because these two harnesses were optioned differently, I found, like I said, it fired up and ran perfectly, but I had no lights whatsoever. I ran into two separate issues. One, let's see if I can find it here. Right there, this common splice. This is power to all the running lights on the truck, coming from the headlight switch. Connectors somewhere in here. I don't want to mess around with it. Anyways, it comes from the headlight switch, runs out to the marker lights, comes out after it picks up power from the interior fuse block, comes out to this common splice. Two wires go up to the front, two wires go out to the back, controlling all of your marker lights. I had a bad spot in the engine harness on the 94, so this harness, I had to cut this splice apart and redo it. Then I had marker lights. Then I ran into the next issue that as soon as I turned the key on, I had turn signals, I had no brake lights, but I had turn signals, and I had no four-ways. Now, the four-ways and the turn signals run on the same wiring, so that didn't make any sense why one would work and one didn't, unless, you know, possibly one of the flasher relays was bad. I swapped the flasher relays around, didn't fix it. Checked power, couldn't figure out what was going on, but see if I can find it here somewhere. Where is it? Oh, there it is. This is the connector that goes to the brake switch, and this should have, get back over here, power coming through this pink with a blue trace wire, and then when the brake light switch engages, should have power going out through this white with a red trace. Now the white with red trace comes back to turn signal switch right there. From there comes out through the bulkhead connector and then goes out to a common splice up here for left and right turn signals and rear turn signals. So why did I have turn signals on one but no flashers and no brake lights? Well, that's all the same element on the bulb. And like I said, because these were optioned differently, this one had four-wheel ABS, this one has rear-wheel only ABS. I found there is several differences in how these connectors are pinned, but it all has to do with the options of the braking system. I found that is our wire right here that controls turn signals and markers and brake lights. And this one was pinned in that open empty spot right there. But on this harness, that pin is the tan wire, which actually goes to the ABS pump system. So for whatever reason, the way that this ABS system is wired, it had power coming through that wire, had power coming back through the entire system, back feeding from the turn signal switch, back feeding all the way up to the brake light switch, and if I turned the key to the off position, the brake lights were stuck on. So I tore apart both of these harnesses completely to find out where those wires all terminalized, where and why I was getting power back feeding into the system. And it all came down to that one wire being in a different position. I unpinned it, moved it over, problem solved. Brake lights are normal, turn signals are normal, four-ways are normal. Well, four-ways weren't normal. Found out that I had a bad turn signal switch. Not a big deal because this truck came with a spare one, plus I had the one out of my green truck. So this one has an issue somehow internally on the hazards. This one functions perfectly. This came with the truck, so it's just a spare parts one, which is good because these are like 170 bucks if you have to buy one. And I currently have the one out of my green truck in the cabin. And I got steering column all put back together with the new switch in it. I don't have my trailer brake controller hooked up yet because when I was disassembling it, my inline breaker decided to break. So I have to pick one up so I can hook the power side back up and have my trailer brakes working again. Underneath of the dash, there really wasn't much to it. Like I said, I just had to swap over that one wire. Oh, of course my headlamp's dying, and it's up here on the right side. So I just unpinned it, swapped it over to the right spot. It's all good to go. I don't have any of my wood gas gauges hooked up right now. Like I said, I'm gonna run on gasoline for a little while. I got power probe and test lights and multimeter, and I got pages and pages of wiring diagrams. I printed out, figuring all of this out. Amazing that between both these trucks, completely different generations, all the different options, the only difference I found that actually mattered was this one wire. Now, if you're going the other way and you're putting four-wheel ABS in, I don't know what you'd have to do with all this. It'd probably be an interior harness swap too. But for my purposes, rear wheel ABS is just fine. Personally, I'd rather not have any ABS, but that's my matter of opinion. Oh, where did I put the keys? Can't have a whole video showing you all the work I did and it doesn't run. Everything powers up just like normal. Notably, the exhaust has a lot more popping sound to it with this engine. Not totally sure why, but it definitely revs up quicker. This engine, for whatever reason, has way more throttle response. This engine ran phenomenal in the green truck, and I am super happy to have it in this one now. And I'm very interested to see what the difference will be power-wise when I get the wood gas system back on it. So other than the issue with the bulkhead connector, the one other thing I had to do, the AC clutch uses a different connector. So I just built an adapter to go from the obd1 engine harness to what was the obd2 connector for the AC clutch. Another thing I had to do, see, we get down here to the back half of the engine harness. That connector right there, this is the factory side from the engine bay harness, and I have the pigtail off of that same truck's harness now spliced on here. I don't particularly know why, but there are two wires extra in this harness that go to the fuel pump, but the fuel pump only uses 4 wires, 2 of which power ground, 2 of which for the sensor. The other 2 are not used. They're just terminalized and just deadheaded for some reason. Ooh. You can see right there is a fuel pump connector, 6 wires going in, 4 wires going out. So no idea what those were for. I just lopped them off and left them in the harness. Other than that, I got to clean up the bed of the truck, and we're going to drive her home today. Like I said, put a couple miles down, do some oil changes. I'm also going to do a couple coolant flushes. I did put new radiator hoses, new water pump, thermostat and gasket, front and rear main seals, intake manifold gasket. I briefly mentioned that the purge valve, which you can't see, but it's right at the back of the intake manifold back there. It was plumbed completely different from one truck to the other for only 1 year of difference. So I had to swap all the lines and the evap canister. There's the charcoal canister, and there's all the lines. So this truck is fully 100% 1995 or 94, depending on which way you look at it, obd1 and compliant for the year emissions. Swapped out the O2 sensors, so everything is happy, the whole 9 yards. All intents and purposes, this is a 94 extended cab long bed 4-wheel drive V10 5-speed, and it's exactly what I want for the time being. I'm just super happy to have it back together, and I'm super happy, looking forward to driving it home tonight. Thanks for watching.